Rael stood at the observation deck of the Krinter research vessel, his gaze fixed on the blue and green orb that was Earth. He turned as the containment door hissed open, revealing Evan, shackled and disheveled, his wild eyes scanning the room. The human's presence was both unsettling and intriguing. "Begin log." Rael spoke to the air, and a soft chime confirmed the start of the recording. Subject 117, Designation Evan. Initial assessment, primitive, possibly low intellect relative to Krinter standards. Evan, however, was far from primitive. Over the next few days, Rael observed the human manipulating his containment field, using scraps of his meal to create rudimentary tools. "Why do you do this, Evan?" Rael finally asked during one of his observation rounds, genuinely curious. Evan's response was a defiant stare, his silence a wall Rael couldn't penetrate. It was then that Rael decided to introduce language lessons, curious if Evan could or would communicate. "Krint." Rael pointed to himself. "Rael." Evan watched, his brow furrowed. After a long pause, he mimicked. "Rael." Surprised, Rael continued, and day by day, Evan's vocabulary grew. Yet, he spoke little, hoarding the words like treasures. Nara, tasked with the security on the vessel, grew suspicious of Rael's frequent, unlogged visits to the human's containment. One evening, she followed him, hiding in the shadows as Rael taught Evan. "This is reckless." Nara confronted Rael afterward in the corridor. "What if he's learning our language to plot an escape? Or to understand us?" Rael countered, his voice low. "There's intelligence in him, Nara. He's not just learning words, he's understanding concepts." Nara's eyes narrowed. "You're endangering the mission. Our objective is to observe, not interfere." "He's alone," Rael said, his voice softening. "Maybe if we show him we're not a threat. Or he shows us we shouldn't have underestimated him," Nara finished. She sighed, turning to leave. "I won't report this, but I'm watching, Rael. Don't forget what we're here for." Rael couldn't ignore his own doubts. What started as a simple experiment had evolved into something more profound. Evan wasn't just responding to the lessons, he was communicating. Through broken sentences, he shared glimpses of human resilience, their survival, their arts, and their wars. "You speak of war as if you know it well," Rael noted during one of their sessions. "All humans know war," Evan replied, his voice rough. "War for land, war for power, war for freedom." "Freedom," Rael repeated, the word feeling heavier in his language. "Is that what you want, Evan? Freedom?" Evan met his gaze, nodding slowly. "Yes." "And peace." Rael recorded every word, every interaction, the implications growing clearer with each passing day. Evan was more than what the Krinter had bargained for, a being not only capable of learning but of teaching, too. As the days turned into weeks, Nara's visits became more frequent, not to confront, but to listen. She too began to see the human not as a specimen but as a peer. "Why help me?" Evan asked once, catching Rael off guard. "Because learning should bridge worlds, not build walls," Rael replied. Nara joined them, her presence no longer a threat but a support. "He's right. Maybe it's time we learned from you." The shift was subtle. Rael's logs, initially filled with observations, became conversations. Conversations about Earth's culture, its people, and its potential. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a routine check, the Krinter Council demanded an update, a demonstration of what, if anything, Evan had learned. Standing before the council, Evan was silent, the weight of the moment upon him. Rael introduced him, his voice steady despite the stakes. "Evan has something to show us," Rael said, stepping back. Evan looked at the council, then at Rael and Nara, and spoke. His Krinter was broken but clear. "I am Evan of Earth. You see a beast, I see beings afraid of what they do not understand." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But I understand now. You search for intelligence everywhere but fail to see the intelligence in yourselves." The council murmured, unsettled. "Evan has taught us about humanity." Nara spoke up, her voice firm. "About their resilience, their creativity, their strength. Qualities we value, qualities we understand. Are we to ignore this? Rael added. Or are we to learn from it? The council was silent, the decision hanging in the air. Finally, one elder spoke. Perhaps we have more to learn than we have to teach. The council agreed to reevaluate their mission. Evan, with Rael and Nara's help, would return to Earth, but this time as an ambassador, a bridge between the Krinther and humanity. As they prepared for their journey back to Earth, Rael looked at Evan, no longer a beast or a specimen, but a teacher. You've changed us, Evan. And you've changed me, Evan replied, a smile breaking through his usual stoic demeanor. Perhaps that's what true understanding brings. Change. Rael nodded, hopeful. A new beginning, then? A new beginning, Evan agreed, looking out at the stars, toward Earth, toward home. The days aboard the Krinther research vessel grew tense as Rael's secret lessons with Evan deepened. Nara watched from a distance, her skepticism slowly turning into curiosity. Evan's progress was undeniable, and his insights into human culture and emotions began to resonate with her as much as they did with Rael. One afternoon, Rael found Nara waiting outside the containment area. Her posture was rigid, a sign of her internal conflict. I've been thinking, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. About what you said, about bridging worlds. Rael nodded, cautiously optimistic. And I want to understand too. Not just observe, but really understand, Nara confessed. She looked towards Evan, who was scribbling something on a piece of paper. Teach me what you've taught him. Teach me to see what you see. From that day forward, their lessons became a trio. Evan, more animated now, took to Nara with a surprising warmth. He shared stories of Earth, of his family, and of the beauty he remembered, which now seemed like a distant dream. Through his words, Rael and Nara glimpsed a world both vibrant and tumultuous, painted in shades of joy and despair. The dynamic in their secret meetings shifted. It was no longer just about teaching Evan but about learning from him. His descriptions of human resilience, creativity, and the complexities of love and conflict painted a rich tapestry of a species that refused to be defined by simplicity. Why do you fight so hard for what you believe? Rael once asked, genuinely puzzled by the contradictions of human nature. Evan smiled, a sad, knowing smile. Because belief is what makes us human. We fight for our homes, for our families. We fight even when the odds are against us because the fight means we're still alive, we're still human. Those words struck a chord with Nara. She began to see the mission, and their treatment of other species, in a new light. One evening, she turned to Rael, her expression troubled. We pride ourselves on knowledge, on understanding the universe. But what if we've been wrong, Rael? What if in our quest to catalog the universe, we've forgotten the essence of what it means to truly understand? Rael didn't have an answer, but the question lingered, heavy in the air between them. Their discussions grew more philosophical, more introspective. They debated not just human culture but Krinther values, their society's goals, and what their encounters with other civilizations had taught them, or failed to teach them. During one intense discussion, Evan challenged them. You study species, catalog them by intelligence, by usefulness. But have you ever asked yourself why? Why do you need to feel superior? Nara was taken aback, the directness of the question cutting through the academic facade. It's how our society functions. Knowledge gives us control, security. But does it give you understanding? Evan countered. True understanding doesn't come from control. It comes from connection. Those words, simple yet profound, became the catalyst for change. Rael and Nara started documenting not just their observations but their reflections, their doubts, and their newfound understanding of what they had learned from Evan. As the weeks passed, the trio formed an unlikely friendship, their secret meetings a small bubble of trust and learning within the confines of the research vessel. But such secrets were difficult to keep in the confined spaces of a starship, and word of their unconventional activities eventually reached the upper echelons of the Krinther Council. Confronted by the council, Rael and Nara stood beside Evan, not as researchers to a subject, but as equals. They presented their findings, but more importantly, they shared their changed perspectives. We began this mission under the guise of research, but we've learned more from Evan than we could have imagined. Rael explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Nara, once a skeptic, now his staunchest ally, added, "Our methods, our very approach to what we consider primitive, must be re-evaluated. We've underestimated not only Evan but potentially countless other species." The council was silent, the members exchanging uneasy glances. Finally, one elder spoke. "You speak of connection over control, of understanding over superiority. These are not the principles our missions were built upon. But perhaps they should be," Nara argued passionately. "What are we if not learners, seekers of truth? Let this mission mark the beginning of a new way forward, a new philosophy for our people." The debate that followed was long and fraught with tension. Traditionalists argued against change, while others were swayed by the compelling case presented by Rael, Nara, and Evan. In the end, the decision was made to pilot a new approach based on the principles of mutual respect and learning. Evan was released from his containment, not as a subject, but as the first ambassador of a new interspecies exchange program. Rael and Nara were appointed as liaisons for Earth, tasked with establishing a foundation of trust and cooperation between humans and the Krinther. As they prepared for their journey to Earth, Evan looked at both Rael and Nara, gratitude and hope shining in his eyes. "You changed your views, opened your hearts. You've given me hope that change is possible." Rael smiled, the weight of their decision a light burden to bear. "No, Evan. It was you who showed us the way." Together they looked out at the stars, a vast expanse of unknowns still to explore, but for the first time, they saw the possibilities not as conquerors, but as learners, as partners in the grand tapestry of the universe. Rael watched as Nara approached, her steps echoing in the quiet corridor. He could tell from her posture that she had finally made her decision. "I've been thinking," Nara started, her voice firm yet reflective, "about what Evan said, about connection over control. I realize now that we've been wrong in so many ways." Rael nodded, his heart lightening. "So you agree with us now?" "Yes, and more than that, I want to help. I want to be part of this change," she confessed. From that moment, their mission gained a new purpose. Evan, now an active participant in their discussions, shared more deeply about human society, its failures, and its profound capacity for love and resilience. "Humanity isn't perfect," Evan explained one evening as they gathered in the common area of the ship, a place that had become their unofficial meeting spot. "We struggle, we fall, but we also learn and adapt. That's what survival has taught us." Rael absorbed every word, each one reshaping his understanding of not just humans, but of his own species' approach to the universe. "And what do you think is the most important lesson your people have learned?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Compassion," Evan replied without hesitation. "Compassion drives us to better ourselves and to help others. Without it, survival means nothing." Nara, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "We could use a little more compassion in our own practices." The trio spent many nights discussing how to integrate these human concepts into Krinther society. They agreed that the first step was to present their findings and experiences to the Krinther Council, to advocate for a shift in their mission's philosophy. The day of the council meeting arrived much sooner than any of them would have liked. The vast chamber was filled with the highest members of Krinther society, all waiting to hear about the unusual proceedings on their research vessel. Rael was the first to speak. "Esteemed members of the council, we stand before you today not just as researchers, but as advocates for a profound shift in our understanding of intelligence and civilization." Nara took over, her confidence bolstered by her convictions. "Our encounters with the human named Evan have shown us that intelligence cannot be measured by technology or advancement alone. It is also found in the ability to feel, to empathize, and to connect." Evan stood beside them, his presence a powerful statement in itself. "I was taken from my home and held here among you because I was seen as a primitive beast. But what I have learned about your people, and what you have learned from me, goes beyond primitive or advanced. It speaks to the core of what makes all beings worthy of respect and understanding. The council murmured among themselves, the weight of Evan's words not lost on them. It is our recommendation, Rayo continued, that our missions no longer focus solely on the collection and cataloging of data. Instead, we should aim to build bridges of understanding and respect between us and the species we encounter. Nara added. This means changing our protocols. Engaging with other civilizations not as subjects to be studied but as equals from whom we can learn. The debate that ensued was intense. Some council members resisted the idea, clinging to the traditional views of superiority and control. Others, influenced by the heartfelt speeches of Rael, Nara, and Evan, argued for change, for an evolution in their approach to the cosmos. After hours of discussion, the council president called for a vote. The chamber fell silent as each member cast their vote. The tension was palpable, the future of their interactions with other species hanging in the balance. Finally, the president announced the results. The motion to restructure our mission objectives to focus on mutual understanding and cooperation is approved. Cheers broke out among some of the council members, a sound echoed by Rael, Nara, and Evan. They had done it. They had shifted the trajectory of their civilization's journey among the stars. As the chamber cleared, the president approached them. Your words have opened our eyes, he admitted. We are tasked with exploring the unknown, and yet it seems we have been afraid of what we might find. No longer. Rael felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not just for himself, but for all those who would benefit from this new path. Thank you, sir. We believe this is just the beginning. Nara, who had once viewed her duties through the narrow lens of security, now saw a future filled with possibilities. We look forward to helping shape these new protocols, she said, a smile touching her lips. Evan, who had endured so much, felt a surge of hope. And I look forward to going home, not just to continue my life, but to help build this bridge between our worlds. As they left the council chamber, the stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter, a little warmer. A new chapter was beginning, one of mutual respect and shared knowledge. Rael, Nara, and Evan knew the road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready. Together they would forge a new path, a testament to the power of understanding and the unyielding spirit of all beings who seek to know not just the universe, but each other. As the Krinta Council convened in their grand hall, a tense silence fell over the room. Rael, Nara, and Evan stood at the center, facing the gathered members. The anticipation was palpable, a collective breath held as they prepared to address the most critical issue their mission had faced. Rael stepped forward, clearing his throat. Esteemed Council, today we present not just our findings, but a plea for a fundamental shift in our approach to other civilizations. Nara followed, her voice steady and confident. Our experiences with Evan have revealed a depth of intelligence and emotion that our initial assessments could not detect. We have learned that our methods, though scientific, lack the empathy necessary to truly understand. Evan looked at each council member, his gaze firm. I was captured and treated as a lesser being because I did not fit the narrow definitions of intelligence and civilization your protocols dictated. But what I possess, what every human possesses, is a profound capacity for adaptation, emotion, and resilience. A senior council member, Thalrin, raised his hand. Are you suggesting that our entire methodology, honed over centuries, is flawed? Yes, I am, Rael responded without hesitation. Because our methodology focused solely on gathering data, not understanding it. We miss the essence of what makes a civilization truly advanced, its people, their cultures, their emotions. Nara added. We propose a new directive, engage with civilizations as partners in learning. Instead of imposing our views, let's learn from theirs. This will not weaken our mission, it will enrich it. Evan's voice was compelling as he shared more about Earth. Humans have explored the depths of the oceans and the far reaches of space, not because they are the most technologically advanced, but because they dare to dream, to reach beyond their grasp. Thalrin pondered this, then asked, and what of the risks? Engaging more deeply with alien civilizations could expose us to dangers we are unprepared for. Nara responded. The greater risk is in continuing our current path. Misunderstanding breeds conflict, but knowledge breeds understanding. We have seen this with Evan. A junior council member, Lyra, spoke up, her voice tinged with curiosity. You speak of partnership and learning, but how would this change our operations on a practical level? Rael was ready with an answer. It means deploying teams not just to observe, but to interact. It means cultural exchanges, shared research, and open dialogues. It means treating each civilization we encounter with the respect due to a peer. The room buzzed with whispers as the council members considered the implications. The debate that ensued was heated, with traditionalists clashing with progressives, each side presenting their case. Finally, the council president, Vorek, called for order. It is clear that this is a pivotal moment for our civilization. We must decide whether to cling to old doctrines or to embrace a new way forward, one that honors the dignity of all intelligent life. The vote was called, and the members cast their decisions. It was a close count, but in the end, the motion to revise their mission's protocols passed. Rael, Nara, and Evan exchanged glances, a mixture of relief and triumph in their eyes. Vorek addressed them directly. Your arguments have opened our eyes to our own shortcomings. This council is prepared to embark on this new path, guided by the principles you have laid out. As the council adjourned, members approached Rael, Nara, and Evan, expressing their interest in learning more about Earth and its people. The atmosphere was charged with a new energy, a sense of beginning anew. Rael turned to Evan and Nara. Today, we've changed the course of our history. Not through conquest, but through understanding. Nara smiled, her earlier doubts replaced by a newfound purpose. And perhaps we'll find that in learning from others, we'll learn more about ourselves. Evan, once a captive, now stood as a symbol of change. I once thought my capture was the end of my story. Instead, it was just the beginning. A beginning that I hope will lead to many fruitful partnerships between our worlds. As they left the hall, Evan looked back at the council members, still engaged in animated discussions. They're eager to learn, just as we are. Yes, Rael agreed. And together, we'll explore not just the stars, but the possibilities of what we can achieve when we recognize the value in every form of life. The trio walked out into the starlit night, their hearts lighter, their minds filled with ideas for the future. Above them, the stars shone bright, a canvas of endless possibilities, now more accessible than ever. With a new directive, a new approach, and renewed hope, they were ready to face whatever challenges and wonders lay ahead. Rael stood in the center of the observation deck, his mind racing with the events that had just unfolded. The vote had passed, but the weight of their responsibility now felt heavier than ever. Nara joined him, her usual stern demeanor softened as she placed a hand on his shoulder. You realize this is just the beginning, she said. Convincing the council was the easy part. Changing the way an entire civilization operates, that's an entirely different battle. Rael exhaled, nodding. I know. But we've taken the first step. That has to mean something. Evan entered the room, his presence commanding despite his unassuming posture. His eyes swept across the vast chamber, pausing on the holographic projection of Earth spinning slowly in the center. You've opened a door that can't be closed, he said. Now, it's up to all of us to decide what we do with it. Rael turned to him. You'll be the face of this change, Evan. Humanity's ambassador. Are you ready for that? Evan chuckled softly, shaking his head. Ready? No. But if there's one thing humans excel at, it's adapting. I'll figure it out as I go. Nara crossed her arms, a faint smirk on her lips. That's reassuring. If the universe weren't at stake, I'd call that charming. Rael glanced at the hologram of Earth, its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the sterile grays and silvers of the Krinther vessel. We've spent so long thinking of ourselves as the peak of evolution, the arbiters of intelligence. What if we're wrong? What if we're just one part of a much larger picture? Evan stepped closer, his gaze fixed on his home planet. Then you learn. That's the only way forward. You listen, you observe, and you grow. That's what humans have always done. Rael studied him for a moment. You're more optimistic than I expected. Evan turned to him, a small smile playing at his lips. Survival requires a certain level of optimism. You don't make it through centuries of chaos and war without believing that things can get better. The conversation was interrupted by the soft chime of an incoming communication. A holographic figure of the council president appeared, his expression neutral but his tone firm. Rael Nara Evan. The council has approved your proposal. Preparations for the interspecies exchange program will begin immediately. You three will lead the first mission to Earth. Rael straightened. Thank you, President Vorek. We'll do everything we can to ensure its success. Vorek nodded, his hologram flickering slightly. This is uncharted territory for us all. But if what you've said is true, then it's a path worth exploring. Good luck. The projection vanished, leaving the room silent once more. Nara broke the quiet, her voice laced with determination. We need to plan. This isn't just about making contact, it's about making the right impression. One misstep and this whole initiative could collapse before it begins. Evan laughed, a sound that seemed almost out of place in the tension-filled room. If there's one thing humans are good at, it's making first impressions. Whether they're good or bad is another story. Rael allowed himself a small smile. Then let's make sure this one counts. We'll need to coordinate with Earth's leaders, prepare them for what's coming. They'll need to understand that this isn't an invasion, but an opportunity. Evan's expression grew serious. They'll be skeptical. Humanity's history has made us wary of outsiders. But if we approach this with honesty and respect, they'll listen. Nara tilted her head, studying Evan. You sound confident. I have to be, he replied simply. If I'm not, who will be? The three of them began outlining their plan, their discussions filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. They spoke of potential challenges, of the cultural bridges they would need to build, and of the monumental task of uniting two vastly different civilizations. As the hours passed, the weight of their mission became increasingly clear. They weren't just representing themselves or their respective species, they were setting a precedent for the entire galaxy. It was a responsibility that none of them took lightly. When the preparations were finally in motion, the trio found themselves back on the observation deck, staring at Earth. The planet shimmered in the void, a beacon of life amidst the vast emptiness of space. Evan broke the silence, his voice soft but resolute. You know, for all our flaws, humanity has always found a way to endure. We're not perfect, but we keep trying. That's what makes us human. Rael nodded, his own thoughts mirrored in Evan's words. And maybe that's what we've been missing all along. The understanding that perfection isn't the goal, progress is. Nara placed a hand on Evan's shoulder, her expression surprisingly warm. Let's hope that progress starts here. With us. As they stood together, a shared sense of purpose settled over them. They were three individuals from two very different worlds, united by a common goal. The path ahead would be uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles they couldn't yet foresee. But they would face it together, armed with the knowledge that true understanding came not from observing, but from connecting. The ship's engines hummed to life, signaling the beginning of their journey. Rael glanced at Evan, then at Nara, a quiet determination in his eyes. This is it. The first step towards something bigger than any of us. Evan nodded, a faint smile on his lips. Let's make it count. As the stars blurred into streaks of light, the vessel set its course for Earth, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of two civilizations daring to forge a new future.